I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like until my white wife walked into our kitchen with a suitcase and told me she was leaving me for a richer man who was more on her level. She invited me to a closure dinner in Buckhead, a final humiliation where her new banker boyfriend could mock the aircraft mechanic with grease stained hands. But what they didn't know was that my phone would ring during dessert, calling me to the private terminal where a chartered jet would land and flip everything they thought they knew about me. The look on their faces when they realized who I really was and what I actually owned was worth every moment of pain they'd put me through. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's letting people discover they never knew who they were messing with in the first place. If you're watching this story unfold, hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from, because you're going to want to see exactly how this night changed everything. The timer on the stove beeped just as I heard the front door open. I turned down the heat under the pasta pot and wiped my hands on the dish towel. Ava was home earlier than usual from her marketing job downtown. Maybe we could finally have a quiet dinner together like we used to. Hey, babe, I called out, stirring the marinara sauce. Perfect timing. Dinner's almost ready. But when I looked up, my stomach dropped. Ava stood in the doorway of our small kitchen, still wearing her navy business suit, with a black rolling suitcase beside her. Her blonde hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes looked cold in a way I'd never seen before. We need to talk, Marcus, she said, her voice flat. The wooden spoon slipped from my fingers and clattered against the pot. What's with the suitcase? She took a deep breath, like she was preparing for a business presentation. I'm leaving. This isn't working anymore. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. We'd been married for 3 years. Sure, things had been tense lately, but I thought we were working through it. I turned off the burner and faced her fully. What do you mean it's not working? Ava, we can talk about whatever's bothering you. She shook her head, not quite meeting my eyes. I've met someone else. Someone who's more on my level. The kitchen felt like it was spinning. I gripped the counter behind me. More on your level? What's that supposed to mean? You know what I mean, Marcus. Her voice got sharper. Trent has a real career. He's a banker in Buckhead. He understands the world I come from. Trent. I'd heard that name mentioned a few times when she talked about work events. A sick feeling spread through my chest. And what world is that exactly? I asked, keeping my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. She finally looked at me directly. A world where people have ambition, where they don't come home with grease under their fingernails every night. That stung. I worked as an aircraft mechanic and line chief at the regional airport. It was honest work, and I was damn good at it. But to Ava, it apparently wasn't good enough. I see, I said quietly. So my job isn't real enough for you. It's not just the job, Marcus. It's everything. The apartment, the lifestyle, the... She gestured vaguely at me. All of it. I need more than this. I wanted to yell. I wanted to ask her why she married me if I was such a disappointment. Instead, I asked the question that mattered most. How long have you been seeing him? 2 months. She said it like she was ordering coffee. No shame, no regret in her voice. 2 months. While I was working late shifts to pay for the vacation we'd planned to take next month, while I was trying to save money for the house she said she wanted. I'm sorry, she added, but her tone made it clear she wasn't sorry at all. I just can't pretend anymore. The timer started beeping again. I walked over and turned it off, then shut off all the burners. The pasta was overcooked now anyway. So that's it? I asked. 3 years and you're just done? I think it's better this way. Clean break. She pulled the handle up on her suitcase. I'll send for the rest of my things later. I watched her walk toward the door. This woman I thought I'd spend my life with. She paused at the threshold. Take care of yourself, Marcus. And then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood alone in the kitchen with the smell of overcooked pasta and the sound of my own breathing. I sat down at our small dining table and put my head in my hands. 3 years. 3 years of believing we were building something together. 3 years of her family treating me like I wasn't quite good enough, while I told myself it didn't matter because Ava loved me. But maybe she never really had. After a while, I got up and scraped the ruined dinner into the trash. Then, I walked out to the breezeway of our apartment complex. The evening air was warm, and I could hear kids playing in the courtyard below. Normal life, continuing like nothing had changed. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Tasha. Saw Ava leave with a suitcase. You okay? Tasha was a nurse who lived 2 doors down. We'd become friends over the past year, bonding over early morning coffee before our shifts. She was smart and funny, with warm brown skin and kind eyes that seemed to see right through people's nonsense. I'm fine, I texted back, even though I wasn't. That's what people say when they're not fine. Want company? I almost said no, but the thought of sitting alone in that empty apartment made my chest tight. Sure. 20 minutes later, she knocked on my door with a six-pack of beer and a bag of chips. Figured you might not feel like cooking, she said, settling onto my couch. I told her everything while we ate stale chips and drank cold beer. Tasha listened without interrupting, her face getting more and more disgusted as I explained about Trent and the different levels comment. She said that to you? Tasha shook her head. Marcus, that woman just showed you exactly who she is. Believe her. Maybe she's right, though, I said. Maybe I'm not ambitious enough. Stop. Tasha's voice was firm. You're one of the hardest working people I know. You're studying for your A&P certifications. You work overtime whenever they need you, and you actually care about doing your job right. That's not a lack of ambition. That's integrity. I wanted to believe her, but Ava's words kept echoing in my head. More on my level? You know what? Tasha said, standing up. Forget her. You deserve better than someone who makes you feel small. After she left, I tried to sleep but couldn't. Finally, around 9 o'clock, I gave up and drove to the airport. Maybe some work would quiet my mind. The maintenance hangar was mostly empty this time of night, just a few guys working on the late shifts. The familiar smell of aviation fuel and machine oil was oddly comforting. I found Gabe, Captain Rios, the co-founder of the charter service, doing paperwork in the office. Marcus, what are you doing here? Gabe looked up from his desk. He was a good man, about 40, with weathered hands and sharp eyes that didn't miss much. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd see if you needed help with anything. Gabe studied my face. My eyes were probably still red from earlier. Everything all right? Just relationship stuff. Nothing I can't handle. He nodded slowly. Gabe wasn't the type to pry, but he also wasn't stupid. Well, since you're here, we've got a medical transport coming in with a sensor issue. Could use an extra pair of hands. I spent the next 2 hours troubleshooting a faulty altitude sensor, losing myself in the familiar routine of diagnostics and repair. There was something satisfying about problems you could actually fix. As we finished up, Gabe clapped me on the shoulder. Good work. Oh, and Marcus, that equity agreement we talked about? The paperwork should be ready next week. I'd almost forgotten about that. 6 months ago, Gabe had offered me a small ownership stake in the charter company in exchange for my expertise and some sweat equity. It wasn't much, but it was a step towards something bigger. Thanks, Gabe. I appreciate you believing in me. I don't believe in you, he said with a slight smile. I know you. There's a difference. Now go home and get some sleep. Stand tall, Marcus. You're worth more than you know. I drove home thinking about those words. Worth more than I know. Maybe Gabe was right. Maybe I'd been so focused on what Ava thought I lacked that I'd forgotten what I actually had. The next morning, I woke up to a text message from an unknown number, but when I read it, I knew exactly who it was from. Closure dinner? Buckhead, Friday? You'll understand when you see. A. I stared at the message for a long time. A closure dinner in Buckhead, the fancy part of Atlanta where all the rich folks lived, where Trent probably lived. Tasha was leaving for her hospital shift when I knocked on her door and showed her the text. "Oh, hell no," she said, reading over my shoulder. "That's some manipulative garbage right there. She wants to parade you around in front of her new man? Show you what you're missing?" "Maybe I should go," I said. "Face it head on." "If you go, don't go alone," Tasha warned. "And whatever you do, don't go small. Don't go small." I liked that. I texted back, "I'll be there." Then I added, "Wear something honest." The rest of the week passed in a blur of work and restless nights. Thursday was quiet, just routine maintenance and paperwork. I jogged a little, slept a little, and tried not to think too much about what Friday would bring. But Friday evening, as I stood in my bedroom putting on a pressed shirt and my cleanest work boots, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't going to this dinner to be humiliated. I wasn't going to shrink or apologize for who I was. I was going to see exactly who Ava had become, and maybe, in the process, I'd remember who I was supposed to be. The restaurant was everything I expected: white tablecloths, soft lighting, and prices that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I found Ava's party at a long table near the windows. She was there with Trent, her mother Eleanor, and a few other people I didn't recognize. Trent was exactly what I'd pictured: tall, pale, with perfectly styled brown hair and a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He had the kind of confident smile that rich people wore like armor. Eleanor, Ava's mother, had always looked at me like I was a stain on her daughter's reputation. Tonight was no different. "Marcus," Ava said as I approached. Her smile was bright and fake. "Everyone, this is Marcus, my ex-husband. Ex-husband." Like I was already just a footnote in her story. I shook hands around the table, meeting each fake smile with genuine politeness. When I reached Trent, his handshake was just a little too firm, his smile just a little too wide. "So, you're the mechanic," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Must be tough working with your hands all day, getting those grease stains out of your fingernails." A few people chuckled. I looked down at my hands, clean, with short nails and a few small scars from years of honest work. "The work keeps me grounded," I said simply. Dinner was a careful dance of small talk and subtle insults. Trent made jokes about blue-collar comedy and simple pleasures. Eleanor asked pointed questions about my future plans with a tone that suggested I couldn't possibly have any. I ate my salmon and answered their questions politely. I didn't rise to the bait. I didn't defend myself or try to prove anything. I just existed, calmly and honestly, in a space where they clearly thought I didn't belong. "So, Marcus," Trent said as dessert arrived, "Ava tells me you work at the airport. Must be exciting, changing oil and checking tire pressure all day." He didn't know anything about aircraft maintenance. That much was obvious. But before I could respond, my phone rang. Gabe's name appeared on the screen. "Excuse me," I said, stepping away from the table. "I need to take this." "Marcus, sorry to bother you." Gabe's voice was tight with stress. "We've got a VIP diverted to Atlanta with a medical emergency on board. I need you at the private terminal. Can you get there?" I looked back at the table, where Trent was entertaining everyone with what was probably another joke at my expense. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. When I returned to the table, I placed two 20s next to my plate. "I have to go. Work emergency." "On a Friday night?" Trent laughed. "What, someone's lawnmower breakdown?" "Something like that," I said, pulling on my jacket. "Oh, you should come with us," Ava said suddenly. her voice bright with what I recognized as her mean-spirited excitement. We were going to tour the hangars after dinner. See where Marcus works. It'll be fun. The way she said fun made my stomach turn. This was the real reason for the dinner. She wanted to show everyone exactly how small my world was compared to theirs. Sure, I said, follow me. Because sometimes the best response to mockery is just letting people see the truth. The ride to the airport was a caravan of expensive cars following my 10-year-old Honda. I could see Trent's BMW in my rearview mirror, probably making jokes about my economy transportation. Let him laugh. He was about to get an education. The private terminal was buzzing with activity when we arrived. 3 jets sat on the tarmac under bright floodlights and ground crews moved with practiced efficiency. I badged us through security and led the group toward the charter service hangars. So, this is where the magic happens, Trent said, looking around at the industrial space like he was touring a zoo. Very authentic. Eleanor wrinkled her nose at the smell of jet fuel and rubber. A couple of Ava's friends whispered to each other, probably wondering why they'd agreed to this field trip, but I wasn't paying attention to them anymore. I could see Gabe's aircraft taxiing toward our hangar, the nav lights cutting through the evening darkness. My phone buzzed with a text from him. VIP on board. Clean landing thanks to your sensor work last week. The jet pulled up to our gate with a high-pitched whine of engines spooling down. I grabbed a headset and marshaled the aircraft to its parking spot, using the hand signals I'd practiced thousands of times. Behind me, I heard the conversation die down as the group watched me work. The cabin door opened and stairs lowered. Gabe emerged first, followed by a woman in a business suit who looked stressed but relieved. Behind her came a man I recognized, Robert Chen, tech executive who'd used our service several times for medical emergencies. Marcus, Mr. Chen called out as soon as he spotted me. Thank God you're here. Is everything ready for the turnaround? Yes, sir, I replied, walking over to shake his hand. How's your father doing? Much better. Thanks to you catching that altitude sensor issue last week, if we'd had problems at 30,000 feet, he shook his head. You probably saved lives with that catch. I felt the group behind me go quiet. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ava's mouth fall open slightly. Just doing my job, sir, I said. Well, you do it better than anyone. Mr. Chen turned to Gabe. Captain Rios, I hope you know what a treasure you have in Marcus here. Best aircraft mechanic on the East Coast. Gabe smiled. I know exactly what I have. In fact, Marcus just became a partner in the company. Sweat equity well earned. The word partner hung in the air like a thunderclap. I saw Trent's confident smirk falter for the first time all evening. Partner? Ava stepped forward, her voice strange. Marcus, you never asked, I said simply. Mr. Chen was already walking toward the FBO office with his assistant, but he called back over his shoulder. Marcus, make sure Captain Rios puts you on the manifest for our Seattle run next month. First class all the way. You've earned it. After they disappeared into the building, the hangar fell into an uncomfortable silence. The only sounds were the distant hum of aircraft engines and the soft whistle of wind through the open doors. So, Trent said finally, his voice lacking its earlier smugness. Partner, huh? What's that, like a honorary title? Gabe laughed. Son, Marcus owns 5% of this company. Last month alone, we cleared $200,000 in net profits. I watched Trent do the math in his head. 5% of a successful charter operation wasn't pocket change. It wasn't banker money, but it wasn't nothing either. I don't understand, Ava said, and for the first time all evening she sounded genuinely confused instead of condescending. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? The question hit me in a place I wasn't expecting, because suddenly I realized the truth. I had tried to tell her. I tried to explain about the equity deal, about my partnership track, about the future Gabe and I were building, but she'd never really listened. She'd heard aircraft mechanic and stopped paying attention to anything else. I tried to tell you about my work, I said quietly, but you weren't interested in hearing about grease-stained hands, remember? Eleanor was studying me with new eyes, probably recalculating everything she thought she knew about her daughters beneath her ex-husband. Marcus, Ava pulled me aside as the group wandered around the hangar, looking at the aircraft with new respect. Can we talk? Privately? We walked out to the service lane between hangars, where the noise of the engines created a buffer from curious ears. You're not the same person I married, she said. No, I replied. I'm exactly the same person you married. You just never bothered to really see who that was. She wrapped her arms around herself against the evening chill. I thought, I mean, you never acted like you had money. Because I don't. I leaned against a concrete barrier. I have something better. I have work that matters. I have people who respect what I do. I have a future I'm building with my own hands. But the partnership, the equity, is me betting on myself instead of waiting for someone else to validate me. I looked at her directly. You wanted to know what level I was on, Ava? I'm on my own level. I always was. She started to say something else, but Trent's voice cut across the space between the hangars. Ava, come on, this place is making my suit smell like fuel. I saw something flicker across her face. Embarrassment, maybe, or shame. For the first time, she seemed to see her new boyfriend the way I was seeing him. Impatient, dismissive, small. I should go, she said softly. Yeah, I agreed. You should. I watched her walk back toward the group, her heels clicking on the concrete. Gabe appeared beside me, hands in his pockets. She's pretty, he said conversationally. She is. Smart? Very. Then why's she with that clown? I thought about that for a moment, watching Trent gesture dramatically while telling some story to Eleanor and her friends. Because she thought she was trading up, I said finally. And maybe she was, in the only way she knows how to measure. Her loss, Gabe said simply. You ready to head home? More than ready. I said goodbye to the group politely, shaking hands and accepting their suddenly respectful nods. Ava lingered for a moment like she wanted to say something else, but Trent was already herding everyone toward the parking lot. Call me, she said quietly as she passed. I didn't promise I would. The drive home was quiet and strange. My apartment felt different when I walked in, not empty anymore, just mine. I made a sandwich and sat on my couch trying to process everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. How did it go? Interesting, I typed back. Good interesting or bad interesting? Still figuring that out, but by the time I went to bed, I knew it was good interesting. Because for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not someone apologizing for his job or his background or his dreams. Just Marcus Hale, aircraft mechanic, business partner, and a man who knew his own worth. The next morning, I was drinking coffee on my small porch when Tasha emerged from her apartment with a bag of muffins from the bakery down the street. Okay, she said, settling into the plastic chair next to mine. I want details, all of them. I told her about the dinner, about Trent's jokes, about the moment everything shifted at the hangar. Her eyes got wider with each part of the story. Wait, she said, nearly choking on her muffin. You own part of a charter company? Marcus, why didn't you ever mention that? Because it wasn't about the money, I said. It was about the work, about building something real. And she just didn't care enough to listen? She heard what she wanted to hear. I was the blue-collar husband who wasn't ambitious enough for her world. Tasha shook her head. That woman is an idiot. She's not an idiot. She just has different priorities. Well, Her priorities suck. I laughed, and it felt good. Maybe they do. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the neighborhood wake up. Kids riding bikes in the courtyard, elderly Mr. Patterson watering his plants on the balcony across from us, the normal rhythm of life continuing. So, what now? Tasha asked eventually. Now I focus on work, on building something real, on not needing anyone else to tell me I'm worth something. Good plan. She stood up and brushed muffin crumbs off her scrubs. I've got to get to the hospital. But Marcus, I'm proud of you for how you handled last night. You could have been petty or mean, but you just were yourself. That takes strength. After she left, I sat on the porch a little longer. My phone had 3 missed calls from Ava, but I didn't feel like calling her back yet. Whatever she wanted to say could wait. I had work to do. But around noon, she showed up at my door. We need to talk, she said, holding a bag that I recognized as containing some of my old shirts. Really talk. I let her in, mostly because I was curious. She looked different in daylight, tired maybe, or uncertain in a way I hadn't seen in years. I brought your shirts back, she said, setting the bag on my kitchen counter. Keep them, I said. They're yours. We're divorced, remember? She flinched at the word divorced, like I'd slapped her. Marcus, I need to explain something. About last night. About everything. I crossed my arms and waited. She'd asked for this conversation. She could lead it. I felt small, she said finally. Around my mother, around her friends, around the life I thought I was supposed to want, and I made you smaller to make myself feel bigger. It was probably the most honest thing she'd said to me in years. Why? I asked. Because it was easier than admitting I was scared. Scared that I wasn't good enough for the life I wanted. Scared that I was exactly as shallow as my mother always said I was. She looked down at her hands. Taking it out on you was cruel and unfair. Yes, I agreed. It was. Can you forgive me? I thought about that question for a long time. Could I forgive her? Probably. Did forgiveness mean we could go back to what we had? Absolutely not. I can forgive you, I said finally, but I can't trust you, and I can't be with someone who sees me as a consolation, prize. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't try to argue with me. We both knew I was right. Are you seeing anyone? She asked quietly. No, but I'm not waiting around either. She nodded and picked up the bag of shirts. I'll keep these then, to remember the good parts. After she left, I realized something had shifted again. The anger was gone. The hurt was fading. What remained was just relief. Relief that I didn't have to pretend to be smaller than I was anymore. That afternoon, I went to the hangar early for my weekend shift. There was a hydraulic issue on one of the Learjets that needed attention, and I lost myself in the familiar rhythm of troubleshooting and repair. The VIP who owned the jet, a pharmaceutical executive named Sandra Mills, stopped by to check on the progress. How long until she's airworthy? She asked. 2 hours, maybe 3, I said, wiping hydraulic fluid off my hands. Want to make sure we do it right the first time. That's why I only fly with your company, she said. I know Marcus Hale signed off on the work. After she left, I looked around the hangar, at the $1 million aircraft, at my small team of skilled technicians, at the operation I was helping to build. This was my world. Not the world Ava wanted, but the world I'd chosen. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Sunday morning started quiet. I watered the small plants on my porch and was enjoying the peaceful silence when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ava standing there with another bag. More shirts? I asked as I opened the door. Actually, yes. She held up a canvas bag. But these are really yours this time. I found them in my closet. I took the bag but didn't invite her in. We stood there in the doorway, the morning sun making everything feel too bright. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, she began, about trust. You're right. I broke something between us that can't be fixed. Ava, no. Let me say this. She took a shaky breath. I told myself I was upgrading my life, but really, I was just running away from who I am, from the parts of myself I didn't like. I listened without interrupting. This felt different from our conversation yesterday, rawer, more real. My mother always made me feel like I had to earn love by being perfect. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect husband. When I met you, you loved me for who I actually was. That should have been a gift, but instead it scared me. Why scared you? Because I didn't think I deserved it. Her voice got smaller. So I convinced myself you weren't enough, instead of dealing with the fact that I didn't feel like I was enough. It was probably the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. But honesty after betrayal was like trying to unbreak a window. You could see all the pieces, but that didn't make them whole again. I'm sorry, Marcus, for all of it. You deserved so much better. I looked at this woman I'd shared 3 years of my life with, seeing her clearly maybe for the first time. She wasn't evil or terrible. She was just scared and lost, trying to find herself in other people's approval. I hope you figure out what you're looking for, I said gently, but I can't help you find it. She nodded, tears making tracks down her cheeks. I know. After she left, I returned the bag of shirts to my closet without looking through them. Some chapters needed to stay closed. That afternoon, I was walking back from the grocery store when Tasha pulled up beside me in her car. Want a ride? She asked, rolling down her passenger window. I'm only 2 blocks away. Get in anyway. I've got gossip. I loaded my groceries into her back seat and climbed in. Tasha had this way of making even mundane errands feel like adventures. So, she said as we drove the incredibly short distance to our complex, remember that banker boyfriend of Ava's? Trent? Unfortunately, well, I was at the hospital cafeteria yesterday and I overheard him on a phone call. Her voice got serious. Marcus, I don't think that man is as rich as he pretends to be. What do you mean? He was talking to someone about a structured note deal, but the way he was talking, it sounded like he was pressuring someone into an investment they didn't understand, using big words to confuse them. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. You think he's scamming people? I don't know for sure, but it didn't sound right. The whole conversation was about leveraging client relationships and maximizing commission opportunities. That's not how honest financial advisors talk. We parked outside our building, but neither of us moved to get out. Should I warn Ava? I asked. Tasha gave me a look. Marcus, that woman just left you for this man. After humiliating you in front of her family and friends, you don't owe her anything. She was right, of course, but the thought of Ava getting hurt, even by her own poor choices, didn't sit well with me. I won't play detective, I said finally. But if something obvious comes up, I'll figure out what to do then. Fair enough. Just promise me you won't go looking for trouble. Promise. That evening, I was packing up some of Ava's remaining belongings when I found myself being more careful than I needed to be. Each item went into a labeled box with tissue paper, like I was packing for a museum. Her jewelry box, her coffee mug collection, the small things that had made our apartment feel like home. When I finished, I texted her with the address of a storage unit I'd rented. Your things will be there by tomorrow evening. She texted back immediately. You don't have to do that. I can come get them. It's easier this way. There was a long pause before her next message. Thank you for being kind even when I don't deserve it. I drove the boxes to the storage facility myself, making sure everything was secure and organized. It felt like closing a door gently instead of slamming it shut. Monday started with a client meeting. Gabe had asked me to sit in on a presentation for a potential new corporate account, a tech company that needed regular flights between Atlanta and Charlotte. Marcus here is our head of maintenance and safety, Gabe explained to the three executives across from us. He's also a partner in the company. The lead executive, a woman named Janet Foster, shook my hand with genuine respect. We've heard good things about your safety record. That's our top priority. As it should be, I said. Every aircraft that leaves this hangar gets my personal sign off. I don't compromise on safety, ever. We spent an hour going over their requirements, discussing flight schedules and maintenance protocols. It was the kind of meeting I'd been attending more often lately, as Gabe included me in more of the business development side of operations. I think we'd like to move forward, Janet said as we wrapped up. When can we start? Next week, Gabe replied. Marcus will personally oversee the setup. After they left, Gabe and I sat in his office reviewing the contract terms. You're getting good at this, he said, leaning back in his chair. At what? The business side, talking to clients, understanding their needs. You've got good instincts. I'd never thought of myself as a business person, but lately I was enjoying these conversations about growth and strategy. There was something satisfying about building something larger than just the day-to-day maintenance work. Speaking of business, Gabe continued, I got a call about a rooftop event tonight in Buckhead, some kind of networking mixer. One of our VIP clients will be there and wants to introduce us to some potential partners. Sounds good. What time? 7 o'clock. Dress nice, but not too nice. We want to look successful, not desperate. That evening, I put on my best shirt and drove to a gleaming high-rise in the heart of Buckhead. The rooftop was decorated with string lights and filled with the kind of people who looked like they belonged in magazines. Perfect hair, expensive clothes, confident laughter. Gabe found me at the elevator. Remember, we're here to listen more than we talk. Let them tell us what they need. The first hour went smoothly. We talked to several business owners about charter needs, exchanged cards, and made real connections. I was starting to feel comfortable in this environment when I saw familiar faces across the crowd. Ava, Trent, and Eleanor were holding court near the bar, surrounded by a small group of admirers. Trent was telling some animated story that had everyone laughing. He looked completely in his element. You okay? Gabe asked, noticing my distraction. Fine. Just seeing some familiar faces. Want to leave? No, we're here for business. But as the evening progressed, I noticed something interesting. People seemed drawn to our conversations. Maybe it was Gabe's calm confidence or my genuine interest in their problems, but we ended up with a small crowd of our own. A woman named Patricia Whitfield, who I realized must be related to Ava somehow, pulled me aside during a lull in the conversation. You're the aircraft mechanic, aren't you? She asked. I tensed, expecting another round of condescending questions about grease stains and manual labor. I'm a partner in a charter service, I corrected gently. Right, sorry. My cousin Ava mentioned you. She lowered her voice. Can I ask you something confidential? Depends what it is. That boyfriend of hers, Trent. Do you know anything about his business practices? The cold feeling from yesterday returned. Why do you ask? He's been very aggressive about managing some family investments, pushing us toward these complicated financial products that honestly, none of us really understand. My husband thinks something feels off. I looked across the rooftop at Trent, still holding court with his stories and charm. I'm not a financial expert, I said carefully, but if something feels wrong to you, maybe you should get a second opinion from someone independent. She nodded thoughtfully. That's what my husband said too. Thank you. As the evening wound down, I found myself alone on the edge of the rooftop, looking out at the city lights. Atlanta spread out below us like a circuit board, all connected pathways and glowing nodes. Marcus, I turned to find Ava approaching, holding 2 glasses of wine. Peace offering? She said, extending one of the glasses. I'm driving. She set both glasses down on a nearby table. Can we talk? Just for a minute? About what? About tonight? About you? She gestured toward the crowd behind us. You looked good out there. Confident. Like you belonged. I do belong. I know that now. She was quiet for a moment. I heard Patricia asking you about Trent. I didn't respond, but she continued anyway. Things with him are complicated. He's not exactly what he seemed to be at first. Ava, that's not my business anymore. I know, but I wanted you to hear it from me. I'm ending things with him. Tonight. I studied her face in the soft light from the party. She looked tired and sad, but also determined. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you honesty, and because she paused, searching for words. Because I want you to know that seeing you tonight reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? What it looks like when someone is genuinely confident instead of just pretending to be. Before I could respond, Trent appeared beside us, his earlier charm replaced by something harder. There you are, he said to Ava, but his eyes were on me. Quite the little reunion you two are having. Trent, we need to talk, Ava said, her voice steady. I'll bet we do. His smile was sharp and cold. Especially after I heard some interesting things tonight about your ex-husband here. Such as? Such as the fact that his little partnership is probably just some charity case arrangement. Pity equity for the help. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, but a kind of tired disappointment at how predictable this man was. You know what, Trent? I said quietly. You're right. I am the help. I help keep million-dollar aircraft safe in the sky. I help build a business that employs good people. I help clients get where they need to go, safely and on time. I took a step closer to him. The difference between us is that I'm proud of the help I provide. What exactly are you proud of? His face flushed red, but before he could respond, Ava spoke up. Trent, we're done. This conversation, this relationship, all of it, done. You can't be serious. You're going to throw away everything we have for him? I'm not throwing it away for anyone, she said calmly. I'm ending it because you just showed me exactly who you are. Trent looked back and forth between us, his composure finally cracking. This is a mistake, Ava. A big one. And you, he pointed at me. You'll never be more than what you are right now. Some people know their place and some people forget it. You're absolutely right, I said. Some people do forget their place. Good luck remembering yours. He stalked off toward the elevator, leaving Ava and me alone again. I'm sorry you had to see that, she said. I'm not. It was educational. We stood in silence for a while, the party continuing behind us like nothing had happened. Marcus, she said finally, I don't expect anything from you. I know I ruined what we had, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you, for who you are, for what you've built. I should have seen it before. Thank you, I said simply. Will you... Could we maybe be friends? Eventually, I looked at this woman who had been my wife, who had broken my heart, who was now standing here asking for something I wasn't sure I could give. Maybe, I said, but not right now. Right now, I need to focus on moving forward. She nodded, accepting the boundary without arguing. Take care of yourself, Ava. You too. I found Gabe by the elevator, wrapping up a conversation with a potential client. Ready to go? He asked. More than ready. As we rode down to the parking garage, Gabe glanced at me with concern. Everything all right? You looked a little intense up there toward the end. Just setting some boundaries, I said. Nothing I couldn't handle. Good man. That's what success looks like sometimes, knowing when to walk away. But as I drove home that night, I realized I hadn't just walked away from Trent's petty insults or Ava's complicated apology. I'd walked towards something better, toward a version of myself that didn't need anyone else's approval to know my own worth. And that felt like the real victory. Tuesday morning hit me like a slap. I woke up before my alarm, feeling restless and angry in a way I hadn't expected. The confrontation with Trent kept replaying in my head, especially his parting words about knowing my place. I canceled my morning jog and sat at my kitchen table with cold coffee, staring at my phone. Somewhere during the night, a rumor had started making rounds on social media. Someone had posted that I was a fake partner at the charter company, that my equity was just charity for diversity. The post had been shared dozens of times. People who didn't even know me were commenting about affirmative action and unqualified minorities. My stomach churned as I read through the comments. I knew exactly who had started this. By the time I got to work, the rumor had spread further. I could see it in the way some of the newer mechanics avoided eye contact, in the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. Marcus. Gabe's voice was tight when he called me into his office. We need to talk. I sat across from his desk, preparing for the worst. Maybe the rumors had spooked some clients. Maybe the company couldn't afford the controversy. I've been getting calls all morning, he said, pulling up something on his computer screen. Want to explain to me why people are saying you faked your partnership agreement? Because someone wants to hurt me, I said simply. And they know lies travel faster than truth. Gabe turned his monitor toward me. Instead of angry emails, I saw documents, legal papers with signatures and dates. Here's your partnership agreement, he said, pointing to the screen. Signed 6 months ago. Here's the bank deposit showing your equity payment. Here's the SEC filing showing you as a legitimate partner. He leaned back in his chair. Marcus, anyone who wants to verify your status can look it up in public records. This rumor won't last 24 hours against paperwork. Relief flooded through me. So, you're not worried about the backlash? The only thing I'm worried about is that you're letting someone else's petty jealousy get in your head. He closed the laptop. Stand up straight, son. You earned every bit of what you have. By lunch, 3 clients had called to specifically request me for their next flights. Word had gotten out about the false rumors, and instead of hurting my reputation, they'd backfired spectacularly. People who actually knew my work were rallying to defend it. But the anger was still there, simmering under my calm exterior. That evening, there was a charity event at one of the downtown hotels. I'd been invited as a guest of one of our VIP clients, a pharmaceutical executive who insisted I attend as her plus one. Usually, I might have declined, but tonight I felt like being seen. The ballroom was full of Atlanta's elite, the kind of crowd where Eleanor Whitfield would feel perfectly at home. I wore my best suit and moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, shaking hands and making conversation. Marcus, my client, Sandra Mills, waved me over to a group near the silent auction tables. I want you to meet some people. For the next hour, I found myself in conversation after conversation about aviation safety, business development, and industry trends. These weren't people humoring me or asking condescending questions about manual labor. They were treating me as an expert, seeking my opinions and advice. Excuse me, a woman interrupted one conversation. You're Marcus Hale, aren't you? I turned to find Eleanor Whitfield standing behind me, looking uncertain in a way I'd never seen before. Mrs. Whitfield, I said politely. I wanted to thank you, she said, lowering her voice, for what you did last month, the medical transport for the Richmond family. That was their daughter in the plane. I remembered the flight, an emergency transport from Charlotte to Atlanta for a teenage girl who'd been in a serious car accident. We'd pushed hard to get her to the trauma center in time. Just doing my job, I said. No, it was more than that. Dr. Richmond told me you personally drove to the hangar on your day off to inspect the aircraft. You stayed late to ensure everything was perfect. Her voice got softer. That girl lived because of the care you took. I hadn't known that Eleanor knew the family, or that she'd heard about my role in the transport. Any of our team would have done the same, I said. Perhaps, but you did do it. She paused, clearly struggling with something. I owe you an apology, Marcus, for how I've treated you, for the assumptions I made. You don't owe me anything, Mrs. Whitfield. I think I do. She looked around the elegant ballroom. I've spent so much time worrying about appearances, about what people would think, that I forgot to pay attention to what actually matters. Character, integrity, the willingness to show up when it counts. Before I could respond, she excused herself and disappeared into the crowd. I stepped out onto the hotel's terrace for some air. The night was warm, and the city stretched out below us in all directions. I was processing the unexpected apology when I heard familiar voices from around the corner. I can't do this anymore, Trent. Ava's voice was clear and firm. You're being dramatic, Trent replied, but he sounded nervous. So, what if some investments didn't work out exactly as planned? Some investments? You've been lying to people, pressuring them into products they don't understand. Patricia's husband lost $40,000 last month on one of your guaranteed structured notes. That's not my fault. I told him there were risks. After you told him it was as safe as a savings account. Ava's voice got harder. I heard you on the phone, Trent. I know what you've been doing. What I've been doing is trying to build a future for us. Do you think this lifestyle pays for itself? What lifestyle? The lies, the fake confidence, the borrowed money? There was a long silence. When Trent spoke again, his voice had changed completely. Fine. You want to throw away everything we could have together? Go ahead. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've given up. I'm not giving up anything, Ava said quietly. I'm getting my self-respect back. I heard footsteps moving away from the terrace. A moment later, Trent appeared around the corner, straightening his tie. When he saw me, his face twisted into something ugly. Well, well, he said, if it isn't the diversity hire. Good evening, Trent, I said calmly. You think you've won something, don't you? Got your little partnership, impressed some people at a party? He stepped closer. But men like you always forget their place eventually. And what place is that? Below men like me. Always has been. Always will be. You can dress it up with fancy titles and equity stakes, but at the end of the day, you're still just the help. I looked at this man, really looked at him. His expensive suit couldn't hide the desperation in his eyes. His perfectly styled hair couldn't cover the sweat on his forehead. He was a house of cards in a stiff breeze, and he knew it. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. I do know my place. He smiled triumphantly. My place is building things that matter. My place is showing up when people need me. My place is earning respect through competence and character. I took a step toward him. Where exactly is your place, Trent? His smile faltered. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your place is lying to elderly people about their retirement savings. Your place is using other people's trust to fund a lifestyle you can't actually afford. Your place is threatened by a mechanic because deep down, you know I have something you'll never have. Which is what? The respect of people who actually know me. His face flushed red. For a moment, I thought he might try to hit me. Instead, he leaned in close and whispered, This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said. It's been over since the moment you had to tear me down to feel bigger. Men who are secure in themselves don't need to humiliate others. He stalked away without another word, leaving me alone on the terrace. I stayed outside a few more minutes, letting the anger drain away. When I went back inside, I found Ava by the coat check, looking pale but determined. Are you okay? I asked. She looked up, surprised to see me. I heard the end of your conversation with Trent. Then you know it's finished. Good. She gathered her purse and coat. Marcus, I need to say something. Ava, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She faced me directly. I was cruel to you, not just wrong or mistaken. Cruel. I made you feel small so I could feel important, and that was unforgivable. I waited for her to continue. You were good to me. You loved me honestly, and I threw it away for something shiny and fake. Her voice got smaller. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see who you are, and I'm ashamed of who I was. Ava, be good to yourself, Marcus. Find someone who sees your worth from the beginning. She walked toward the exit, then turned back. For what it's worth, I think you're going to be very happy. You know who you are now in a way you didn't before. That's worth something. Then she was gone, leaving me with a strange mix of sadness and relief. The next morning, I woke up feeling different, lighter somehow. I went for my run, longer than usual, letting my feet carry me through the neighborhood as the sun came up. When I got back, Tasha was watering plants on her balcony. You look good, she said as I walked up the stairs. Peaceful. I feel peaceful, I realized. It was true. The anger was gone, the hurt was fading, and what remained was just myself. Coffee? She asked. Always. We sat on my porch with steaming mugs, watching the complex wake up around us. Kids heading to school, parents rushing to work, the ordinary rhythm of life continuing. So, what's next for Marcus Hale, aircraft mechanic and business owner? Tasha asked. I thought about that. For the first time in months, the future felt open and full of possibility. More of the same, I think. Good work, real relationships, building something that matters. Sounds perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from Gabe. VIP client specifically requested you for Friday's Seattle run. First class treatment all the way. You've earned it. I showed the message to Tasha, who grinned. See? The universe is paying attention. Friday morning arrived bright and clear. I was at the hangar early, doing my final safety checks on the Lear that would take us to Seattle. Everything was perfect. Fuel systems, hydraulics, avionics, all running exactly as they should. Mr. Chen arrived with his usual efficiency, but this time he brought his wife and teenage daughter. Marcus, he said, shaking my hand warmly, I want you to meet my family. This is my wife, Linda, and my daughter, Amy. It's an honor to meet the man who saved my grandfather, Amy said solemnly. She was maybe 17, with her father's serious demeanor but kind eyes. I just did my job, I said. No, Linda Chen corrected gently. You did your job perfectly. There's a difference. As we prepared for departure, I noticed a familiar figure across the tarmac. Eleanor Whitfield was boarding another aircraft with a small group, probably heading to some charity function or business meeting. She saw me and nodded, not friendly exactly, but respectful, an acknowledgement between equals. Ready to go, Marcus? Gabe called from the cockpit. Ready. As we taxied toward the runway, I looked out at the city of Atlanta spreading away beneath us. Somewhere down there, Ava was probably starting her day, maybe figuring out what came next for her. Trent was probably working his phone, trying to rebuild his collapsing house of cards. But I was here, 30,000 feet up, doing work that mattered with people who respected what I brought to the table. I was building something real with my own hands and my own mind. The jet climbed steadily into the morning sky, carrying us toward whatever came next. Through the window, I could see the sun painting the clouds in shades of gold and orange, the whole world spread out below us like a promise. I settled back in my seat and smiled. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I belonged, and that was enough.